Welcome back, everyone, to Watcher of All Things. My name is Kiki. This is my podcast where I talk movies, TV shows, and all things entertainment. And today is episode 20, and what I am calling the X-Men Spectacular, where we will be discussing, just briefly, not for too long, X-Men 97. It finished a couple weeks ago with episode 10, the season finale. So it's been a couple weeks. Hopefully people have caught up and been able to watch it. But then we are going to do something fun. We are going to do a tier list of all 13 X-Men movies. So that is X-Men, X-Men 2, X-Men United, X-Men The Last Stand, X-Men Origins Wolverine, X-Men First Class, The Wolverine, X-Men Days of Future Past, Deadpool, X-Men Apocalypse, Logan, Deadpool 2, X-Men Dark Phoenix, and The New Mutants, which I have recently watched all of those over the last 2 weeks. Some are certainly better than others, and they vary in quality. There's no doubt in saying that for sure. What a strange franchise and turn of events. But before we get into that, I hope you had a great week. Lots of casting news, lots of trailers, so I had to very much pick and choose, and I was going to record this a couple of days ago, but this one film just kept deciding to announce that it was casting more and more people, and the cast has grown by a person every single day, and it's just been infuriating. So today is Friday, May 31st, and I'm calling it. Rian Johnson, stop casting people. But before we get into all the X-Men stuff, let's talk news. The first piece of news comes from a local corporate idiot, Ted Sarandos, the head of Netflix, who this week was in a New York Times interview, I believe, and Variety then picked it up, and they were talking about kind of what appropriate content should be watched where, what's like considered Netflix content that you should watch at home, what should be in theaters, so like Barbie and Oppenheimer, and speaking of Barbie and Oppenheimer, he said Barbie and Oppenheimer would have been just as big on Netflix, and there's no reason to believe that the movie itself is better in any size screen. So the New York Times reporter had told him that Barbie and Oppenheimer, which both had impressive box office runs and spawned the cultural phenomenon Barbenheimer, earned $1.44 billion worldwide, and while Universal's Oppenheimer grossed $951 million. And the reporter asked him, are there any things that you just don't feel are in your wheelhouse right now? And he said both of those movies would be great for Netflix. They definitely would have enjoyed just as big of an audience on Netflix. And so I don't think there's any reason to believe that certain kinds of movies do or don't work. There's no reason to believe that the movie itself is better in any size screen for all people. My son's an editor. He is 28 years old, and he watched Lawrence of Arabia on his phone. Just a nice hybrid comment of stupidity and a complete lack of awareness of the industry. Like, Barbenheimer was so great for the theater industry. It got everyone going and, being united. It's impossible for these movies to be just as big at home. That's literally, it's literally not possible. They would not be as popular. It's not like Red Notice, which Netflix clearly fluffed the numbers on because I'm so convinced nobody was watching that. Apparently it's the most, popular Netflix movie of all time. Whatever. I think he is so full of shit, and streaming is never going to be as big as theatrical releases. There's always going to be more money in the theaters. Maybe not right now because there's some stuff that is crashing hard. Furiosa did not do well last weekend, and we had like the worst Memorial Day opening in 40 years or something like that. And look, a lot of stuff was delayed because of the writer's strike, so there's just not tons of great selections, I want to say. But hopefully next year we can get theaters back on. I mean, there's still good movies coming out this year. There's still going to be lots of good stuff still to come out. I mean, and we're a couple weeks away from Kinds of Kindness. And speaking of next year's films, Mission Impossible 8 production not going well. Some news broke this week on World of Real that Mission Impossible 8 production delayed again. Budget is said to be nearing $400 million. Mission Impossible 8 restarted production in March after last year's strikes and halted shooting on the movie in July. There's been a lot of delays with this one, and bad luck has struck on the film again. And the most recent delay is due to a malfunction while filming with a $25 million submarine. It has been revealed that the gimbal, which is used to lower the 120-foot high structure, jammed under its weight and had to be repaired. Due to this, filming has been pushed back weeks and causing the cost of the films to dramatically increase. The current budget for this film is said to be nearing $400 million. Last year, Christopher McQuarrie, who's the director, and I believe he's writing them as well, he stated that before the strikes, they had about 40% of the films shot and that they were done location shooting in Africa and the Arctic. He also added that the biggest and most complicated sequence of the film had yet to be shot. just not going well. The original date was June 2024, so this summer. It's now being pushed to May 23rd, 2025, delayed a full year. And also the Hollywood Reporter added that the film was going to be dropping its original title, Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 2, for this unannounced one. So Dead Reckoning Part 1 came out last summer. Absolutely loved it. It was great. And now it's no longer called Dead Reckoning Part 1. They've just retconned it for all the physical media that it's just Dead Reckoning. It's funny because the last two have been delayed because Dead Reckoning Part 1 was delayed a cajillion times because of COVID, and now Dead Reckoning Part 2 is also been delayed because of strikes and because of, mishaps that are happening. So any franchise that has been operating since 2019 and filming into 2020, it's not been a good time for these franchises. Like the Batman Part 1 was supposed to come out in 2020, I want to say, or like October 2021, something like that. Massively delayed. Dune also was supposed to come out, I think, in 2020. It got pushed to 2021, and it was a day and date release, so it was also in theaters and at home at the same time, so that's why the box office isn't as high. Even Dune Part 2 as well, and the Batman Part 2 both were affected by the writer strikes. The Batman Part 2 hasn't even had like a finished script, I don't think, and they haven't even like started production at all or anything like that. We've had no casting news at all for that. Dune Part 2 was supposed to come out October 3rd of 2023, and it just came out in March, which I think was probably for the better of the film because of the Oscars and stuff like that, because if you're competing with like Oppenheimer, and last year was just really stacked for movies. I feel like we were very spoiled, and this year will be a much more clean slate that might reflect well at the Oscars. It might not, we don't really know, but Mission Impossible is yet another franchise that's just been cursed by COVID and lockdowns and super strict procedures, and like you've seen it in TV as well. Like I think Stranger Things, they've probably been delayed a billion times, and now all these kids are like in their mid-30s and they're playing high schoolers, so I don't know. But some positive news. Let's get into some positive news. The Bear Season 3 trailer dropped this week. They had a little teaser, but this is like a full trailer, and oh man, we are so back. Carmy is up to his normal shenanigans. It looks like he's going to be spiraling hard. It's not looking good, so they're going full upscale restaurant and trying to go full steam ahead. He does escape from the freezer, obviously, that he was in the series finale. It looks like they, I don't know, use a saw or something to weld him out or something like that. It's coming out June 27th, so we're not that far away. We're less than a month. That's a Thursday. Yeah, Thursday, June 27th, The Bear is coming out. And actually, they just announced this week that FX is for the first time going to be airing The Bear. I think they're doing a marathon the week before, or starting the weekend before, leading up to the Thursday when it comes out. And I'm not sure if the new season's going to be showing. I would assume so, and that's why they're showing it on FX, because it is an FX Hulu show. So that's really cool to me. Although I don't think they'll be airing it live because they do full drop. They don't do like week to week ever, do they? I hope they would go week to week, because The Bear is a great show, and I think it doesn't benefit at all. I'm not saying that binging hurts it, but it doesn't help it at all. Like, it's not a show I want to binge. If it was week to week, I think it would have so much more tension, longevity. I just think week to week is such a better model for television shows. Creates much more of a cultural impact and discourse online for people to talk about. Like, in the old days with like, I don't know, Tumblr or whatever, wasn't that a big thing of like doing Tumblr posts or whatever? Now it's just like Twitter bots every time you open X, and it's just atrocious. But I should look that up because I'm not sure. Is it going to be, let's see. Okay. The Emmy award-winning series returns on June 27th with all 10 episodes available simultaneously. Oh, to watch on binge style on Hulu. That's so terrible. That's such a bummer. One of the best shows of the last few years, along with Succession, Better Call Saul, and just, we're in such a golden age of TV, and we're feeling the need to just dump it all at once. It's so, I hate it. That's a real bummer, to be honest. But yeah, it looks good. It looks like he's going to try and rekindle his love with his lady friend, and it looks like, his cousin is really going to try and pull him in and reel him in, and because his cousin just had such a good character arc last season of like redeeming himself and realizing what it's all about in fine dining and high-end restaurants, and now he's the main boss, and Carmy is just like losing his shit and losing his head and spinning off, and he's just kind of spiraling. So I'm very excited for The Bear Season 3. I seriously love The Bear. It's super heartfelt, but it's also just one of the funniest shows. Again, it's like a Succession or something, that it's not actual jokes, it's just like these dramatic, tense moments that have moments of levity that are hilarious. So should be really great. And just very quickly, speaking of Furiosa and box office difficulties and the where are we going with the theater industry, Furiosa box office puts brakes on George Miller's next Mad Max movie, is what the Hollywood Reporter put out this week. So if you didn't know, there is another movie that they wrote simultaneously at the same time as Furiosa, and both of these were supposed to be, they were writing them like around the time of Fury Road, and they wanted them to be prequels to Fury Road. So The Wasteland is Max's adventures right before we lead into Fury Road, and Furiosa leads right into Fury Road as well. It's not looking good. Furiosa Mad Max Saga had a disappointing $32 million domestically for the 4-day Memorial weekend and $36.5 million overseas, with diminishing hopes for Mad Max The Wasteland, another Mad Max installment Miller has been toying with for years. So yeah, both of these he's been working on since Fury Road in 2015, so almost 10 years now. And I mean, it's not a never say never type thing, because I especially think with sci-fi and action adventure genres, sometimes you make these really creative artistic films and they just don't do well. Like both Blade Runner 2049, a fantastic movie, did absolutely horrendously at the box office, and you see it all the time. Very popular movies, very great movies don't do well at the box office or don't bring in crazy numbers. I mean, Challengers, I was just talking about this with my girlfriend last week, because she was like, oh, Challengers must be doing really well. And you would think so, because it's everywhere. When you go online, everyone has seen it. Then you look at the box office, it's only made like $86.5 million globally, with and it's pretty 50-50 of domestic and international, which is surprising because it had a budget of $86 million, I'm fairly sure. So it's like not even really broke even, because you do need to double your budget because of marketing and stuff like that. So just disappointing, but I hope look, many of these companies have so much money to spare, especially like Apple, who are producing movies now, that they can make a Killers of the Flower Moon, and even if it doesn't make a kajillion dollars and they make their everything back that they spent on it, they're going to be okay, because they're literally trillionaires. But it is disappointing that, more people aren't going out to see films like Furiosa that are just great, fun summer adventure flicks. And I have some great news that this week I got my first comment with hate or incel undertones to it. Not really, it's very overt. At user-ce9no3pk1q commented on a YouTube short that I posted yesterday about Furiosa, and how, Furiosa, I talked about last week that it kind of feels like a breath of fresh air in the franchise. George Miller, it seems like he's not afraid to kind of change it up and be like, oh, what if we told more story? Well, anyways, this user said, not watching this new age female lie, and then it's a new line with no period, no punctuation, anything. Stopped watching new movies altogether if they contain this LGBT agenda shit. Yes, because Furiosa was such a loud and proud film. There isn't a single kiss in the film. There isn't any real tones of sexuality. There's tones of sexual violence in it, but there's no statements about her sexuality in Furiosa at all that I saw. So I'm like, what are you talking about? Just say you hate women. So I deleted the comment, but I was so close to replying and be like, dude, did we watch the same movie? Because I don't remember a single conversation about Furiosa being in love with anyone or having feelings for anyone. She has a companion in the movie, but I didn't take that as they were lovers or something. But anyways, hilarious comment. I want to thank the Academy for this amazing honor and getting my first incel bot comment on a YouTube short. That's a clip from a full podcast. He couldn't even listen to the full thing. He only listened to just the clip part and had to hate on that. So hilarious. We need less scumbags like that commenting on the internet or dwelling on the internet. Just say you don't like movies with women that are badass and what are you talking about? LGBT agenda. Oh my god, it was dying laughter when I read that, and what a thrill. It was a real honor to get a comment like that. But yeah, sad news. Furiosa not doing well. I think it'll do well when it gets on video on demand. I feel like some of the people that are, oh, I don't want to go to the theater, I get it, theaters are expensive, to be honest. It is $20 Canadian for an IMAX ticket, I think is the price now. So it is expensive, but every theater has a loyalty program that you get a free ticket every month. So, and it's $7 a month or whatever. So there's lots of good deals to make theater going experience cheaper. If you have a Costco membership, you can get a night out at the movies or whatever. So I get it. And the final piece of news, what I've been trying to talk about for days when I'm like, okay, you know what? I'll record the podcast tonight because then I can edit it and be done by the weekend. Oh, never mind. They announced another cast member. Okay, well, I'll wait till tomorrow. It's Thursday, then I can record on a Thursday night. That's easy. Oh, they announced another cast member. Oh, okay. Well, I guess we have to wait then. Oh, it's Friday. Oh, okay, it's Friday morning. They've just announced someone as a cast. Rian Johnson Friday night has to announce another cast member. Just for the love of God, stop. Please stop. Like, drop them all at once because I just want to talk about them all at once. So I guarantee you in 20 minutes after I finish recording this, whenever, they're going to announce another cast member. So last week we talked about Knives Out, and it's got the green light. It's going ahead. Well, every day this week, there has been a cast member dropped. So let's get into it. Here's what we have so far. Daniel Craig is returning in Wake Up Dead Man, a Knives Out mystery, as the third installment is officially titled. He will star alongside the previously announced additions of Fleabag actor Andrew Scott, Kerry Washington, Glenn Close, Challengers Breakout Josh O'Connor, Priscilla's Kaylee Speeney, Jeremy Renner, and Mila Kunis. And just today, they announced that Knives Out 3 adds Good Luck to You, Leo Grand, star Daryl McCormack to cast. So absolutely stacked cast. Let me talk about who am I most excited for. That's tough. I really love everyone on this cast. I think Daryl McCormack's the only one I don't know. Was he in Peaky Blinders? I feel like I recognize him. Yeah, he is. Season 5. There you go. Kaylee Speeney, very excited about her audition. I'm excited for her to be in a comedy type. I'm very curious what's going to happen. Oh, also, wait, does it say in the list? No, Mila Kunis was announced today, so she's probably going to write a letter supporting the murderer. I would say who I'm most excited for, I really want to see Josh O'Connor in a comedic role because he's played, Prince Charles, and he's also in Challengers. I feel like he wasn't able to be funny enough, you know what I mean? And I think he's just a very funny dude, so I'm excited to see him in that. Andrew Scott I love. I think he's hilarious in Fleabag, a show I deeply love. Kerry Washington, very just naturally funny in real life, so I think if she's given the right materials, just a stacked cast. Kaylee Speeney has been one of the performers this year that I've been very, very impressed with, and she's in the new Alien movie. I thought she was great in Civil War, but also since Priscilla, I'm like, who the hell is this? They are phenomenal, and I'm very excited that she's in this. She's very young. I think she's like a year older than me. She's 25, and she already has like a really cool resume of 2 good movies that I enjoyed and a third one that looks amazing from the trailer. So yeah, Knives Out 3, like I said last week, if they can make it a little more timeless comedy and less focused on just how Glass Onion was with just talking about like COVID and only things that were so within context of that 1 year. It was really odd. I hope it's a little more fleshed out, the world that we're getting here, but really great news. I'm excited for it. I hope it gets a theatrical release. I believe it will. Come on. I mean, they have to. It's Knives Out. And the first one, I think, did very well in theaters as far as I can remember. I remember seeing it and laughing my ass off. So I'm very excited for whatever the next turn in the Knives Out series is. But the stacked cast looks really awesome. Maybe minus Mila Kunis, I'm not that crazy about. Jeremy Renner is a very interesting one because wasn't it in Glass Onion when they had the Jeremy Renner hot sauce and they were referencing Jeremy Renner? So I've seen so many people online being like, wait, is Jeremy Renner just playing himself in this movie? Which I think would be so brilliant if they just made Jeremy Renner play himself and he's involved in a murder mystery. And it's his first film since the snowplow accident that nearly killed him. So good for him getting back out there and back on set. That comes out next year, I believe. I'm very excited for it. I like Rian Johnson stuff in general. Even the last, what is it, Star Wars The Last Jedi? Is that what The Last Jedi. That's not a terrible movie. Like, I think it doesn't really work as a Star Wars movie, but it's not a bad movie by any means, really, other than the Rose stuff is kind of cringe. And no hate on her. I think she's a good actress, but just what she was given to do was unfair. Looper, great film. I think Rian Johnson, he's found his niche here with like detective stuff, so murder mystery is where we go. And that's the news for the week. Lots of cool stuff coming out, and we're getting good news. We're also getting terrible news about theaters and they're not doing well. Maybe price caps will help on tickets. Somehow we need to make the theater experience more affordable, but at the same time, most people who go to the movie theaters act like jerks anyways and go on their phone the entire time or talk throughout the entire movie or just talk at all. I cannot stand talking in the theater. Like when people just say anything in the theater, it drives me up the wall. And if you put your brightness down on your phone, but you still take it out and go on it, you're still going on your phone. You can sit all the way at the front of the theater, but everyone can still see your screen. It doesn't matter how dark it gets. It drives me nuts. That's enough of a rant. That's the news of this week. I hope you're excited. We're going to get into some X-Men. We're going to get into the weeds. And of course, there's timestamps below. If you just want to listen to the news, you want to bounce around, you want to skip the X-Men 97 because I will be in spoilers only. I'm not not doing non-spoilers. I'm just going to do spoilers. So you can skip that, go straight to the X-Men tier list, where of course there will be spoilers because many of these movies are old. You can also just go to what else I watched, and you can go to the outro, all the timestamps below. But let's get into it. Let's do this. So you will recall that in episode 11, I talked about episodes 1 to 3 of X-Men 97, which is an American animated television series created by Bo DeMeo, who has since been fired from the show, streaming on Disney Plus based on the Marvel Comics superhero team, the X-Men. It is a revival of X-Men the animated series, 1992 to 1997, continuing the story of the X-Men who face new challenges following the loss of their leader, Professor X. Dun dun dun, he comes back in like episode 5 or whatever. I talked about episode 1 to 3 already, so I'm going to avoid those and kind of focus on 4 to 10. As I said in the last one, I really loved this series, and this is maybe my favorite show this year. I've actually rewatched already episodes 1 to 4 because I just enjoyed it so much, and I think I talked about it last week when I was talking about the new X-Men film. I don't really read tons of graphic novels, and we didn't really have like satellite television at my house until I was, 12 or 13, so a lot of the stuff like X-Men 97, Spider-Man the animated series were on channels that I didn't get, or B, once I did have satellite TV, weren't on the networks that we did get. So I wasn't really exposed to a lot of this stuff as a kid. I really only watched Batman the animated series and like Batman Beyond. For some reason, those were really the only two things, and all of the movies of Spider-Man and stuff. But X-Men, I think, was a little too mature for me. I do remember seeing X-Men Origins Wolverine in theaters, but X-Men the animated series, I remember every time I would have seen it at someone else's house or whatever, I absolutely loved it. So I think I will go back and do an X-Men animated series watch, because X-Men 97 was fantastic. It's so well made. I can imagine for diehard fans, of course there's going to be nitpicks. If you want a super in-depth talk about the show from someone who's an absolute expert, I highly recommend Nando V Movies on YouTube, and he also has the Just Nitpicking, I believe is what his podcast is called. Really great if you want to know. He brings the comics in and references and stuff like that, so very detailed. But this is my review as someone who is not a complete expert. I'm still surprisingly fairly new to who all these X-Men are. So let's talk about X-Men 97. It's 10 episodes, as I said. This is season 1. It looks like they're going to do 3 seasons. Every episode has a runtime of about 30 to 43 minutes. I think the finale is the longest episode, if I can remember correctly. And it was released March 20th, and it just finished about 2 weeks ago. The cast has Ray Chase as Scott Summers, fantastic. Jennifer Hale as Jean Grey. Allison Seeley Smith as Aurora Monroe Storm, who's so phenomenal. One of my favorite characters. Cal Dodd as Logan Wolverine, who we will talk about. J.P. Karliak as Morph. Lenora Zan as Rogue. George Buza as Dr. Henry Hank McCoy, or Beast. A.J. Lucasio as Remy LeBeau Gambit. Holly Chu as Jubilee. Isaac Robinson Smith as Luke Bishop. Matthew Watterson as Eric Magnus Magneto Lesnar. And Ross Marquand as Charles Xavier. There's also Adrian Hugh as Kurt Wagner, Nightcrawler. A really great cast. I really like the team that they have in this show. And here's one thing. When I was growing up, I was always under the impression that like Wolverine was the main X-Men. He was the X-Men. And because of the movies, it seems like Hugh Jackman was always the main center of the story. It could not be further from that in X-Men 97. He's very much like the side character. This show really involves Magneto, Charles, and Gambit, and it's really about Scott Summers as well, which I really like the shift in focus. I really enjoyed that it's not just like the movies, where it does, when you do watch the movies, it does feel like Wolverine is the most important character, when he's really not. I like how much more of a team player he is in this series. So this is just a very fun show. It was something that it has a lot of great moments of classic like cartoony fun, and at the end of the day, it is kind of a children's cartoon, and not really, because I do think that everybody could enjoy this. Like, I feel like adult X-Men fans are probably frothing at the mouth, absolutely loving this, because it has like 99% on Rotten Tomatoes. It's the highest rated Rotten Tomato score for a Marvel project, I'm fairly sure. It's very fun, but the writing and the story arcs are so deep, and there's so many just fantastic quotes in this. Like, just the titles of the episodes, like Tolerance is Extinction and stuff like that. Every episode I found myself just reflecting of like, these are so much more deeper than a simple, cartoon is. And that really goes to speak to what so many great creators are saying right now, that, just because something is animated doesn't mean it's for children and should be laughed off, like Jimmy Kimmel does at the Oscars every year whenever he always laughs at the best animated film. It's like, these are serious films, like Spider-Verse and, Soul, Disney Pixar movies in general. These are very serious things. And I think X-Men 97 is such a great example of amazing voice acting, phenomenal animation. I mean, you go back and watch, I watched a couple episodes of the 90s X-Men show, and the animation is, it's fun because it's like 90s animation. It reminds me also of the Spider-Man show that I binged a couple years ago. But this just feels like such an upgrade and so well adapted. I mean, even just the opening theme song, which I have listened to a billion times, just watching that opening theme again is so awesome. So I really loved everything about this show. I have very little that I didn't like about the show. And like I said, just the character arcs are so phenomenal. And there's going to be spoilers, of course, I'll say, because it's all out now. So if you want to avoid all spoilers, just skip ahead to the tier list. I think everyone except Morph in the show gets a character arc. You have Scott Summers, who realizes the woman he's in love with is not actually Jean Grey, and it's Madeline Pryor. Storm loses her powers a couple episodes back. She has to refine them. And it's just, oh my God, that Storm sequence where she's finding her powers with the help of Forge, again, is that's one of my favorite moments of the season. It's just, she's such a badass character, and it is very interesting that, like, with this show, nobody's calling it, I don't know, I saw very few complaints online of like, oh, they made X-Men woke and stuff like that. What did you think the X-Men have been? They've always been an allegory for the civil rights movement and, social injustices. These are X-Men. These are people that have been outcast by society because they are different, and they bond together because they are different. And that just goes right into the brilliance of the writing this season. There's so many phenomenal quotes about acceptance and tolerance and accepting who you are. I mean, you watch Sunspot and he's telling his mother that he is a mutant, and she kind of acts like it's a choice or whatever. And you see those in the X-Men movies as well. It's very interesting. And I just think a lot of queer people, gay people, people in the LGBTQ plus community, there's so many great quotes and representations of what they experience in real life. And then there's some of these action sequences, like Storm getting her powers back, that are better than pretty much everything Marvel has done in the last 6 years, or comic book movies have done in the last 6 years, other than maybe Guardians of the Galaxy 3 and Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. There's just so much great stuff. I think that, like, the Storm thing specifically, when she gets her powers back, it's so great. And episode 5, you have Gambit's death on Genosha, a really powerful episode. I was watching it, I rewatched it at the gym actually when I was doing cardio, and I was almost in tears. I was actually very sad watching it, even though I had seen it before. But it just goes into the writing, how much you come to care about the characters by episode 5. You're rooting for all these people despite how flawed and, how much conflict they have in their lives. It's so wonderfully done, and the characters, you grow on them so fast. And I really liked actually the love triangles in this season. Like, from what I understand and from the movies that I watched, the X-Men have always had, love stories. I mean, that's comic books in general. There's always love stories. Every comic book I've ever read has some complicated love story. But this season, there's a lot of great love triangles going on. You've got Gambit, Magneto, and Rogue. You have Scott, Wolverine, Logan, and Jean Grey. But you also have Morph, Logan, and Jean Grey. Something that I didn't pick up the first time watching until I listened to some other reviews, and actually in the final episode when Morph says, like, oh, Logan, it's gonna be okay, and then transforms into Jean Grey, I was like, oh my God, Morph, I think they have feelings for Logan. And then watching it on the second time, from the first episode, you can see, like, Morph definitely has feelings for Logan. They are constantly trying to get their attention, and Logan only talks to them when they transform and they morph into other characters. So really interesting things that you only really pick up until the finale, and then you realize that they've been sprinkling it in throughout the entire season. And speaking of Morph, it's kind of disappointing they didn't get a character arc really this season, I feel like, and especially in every fight and every review I've listened to has talked about Morph in the same way that, like, what do they do in every fight? They transform into another superhuman or another mutant, and another X-Men, and then they just get beat up in like 2 seconds and they're out of the fight. So I was kind of disappointed with how they wrote Morph. I feel like Morph could have offered more to the team, but I did like the story that they had with Logan and their admiration and love for Logan, and it's clearly not reciprocated. So very interesting. Yeah, there's lots of great dynamics in this season. There's lots of great character understandings. A classic, butting of heads between Cyclops and Logan, because they clearly both have big personalities, but also they both are in love with Jean, and one of them is married to Jean, and it's just very interesting. I mean, Logan and Jean kiss at one point, and it's very conflicting because Jean doesn't remember who she is, and she's not sure what memories are hers, what memories are Madeline Pryor's, who has, been there for her in her place before. So very interesting. I really love the romance of this season. The whole Magneto Rogue thing on Genosha was really romantic with Gambit there, and he's pissed and then he dies because Magneto, gives his life for him when he's not actually dead, of course. And perhaps another nitpick I have, the villains this season. I think Mr. Sinister was kind of wasted, and they just kind of treated Mr. Sinister like a bumbling buffoon, which is kind of disappointing because it's a really cool character, and it just feels like Mr. Sinister didn't have anything to do. What I did love was Bastion, voiced by Theo James. Absolutely phenomenal. Just a villain you hate so much. He wants to wipe out humans as well, and that's what unites Magneto with the X-Men, realizing that, he's going to wipe out everyone. Just really great, and I just loved the writing of Bastion. I thought Theo James voicing him was so phenomenal. He gives a great performance, and he's not even in it until, episode 6 or 7, but it just feels like he is a terrifying villain. So, again, like I said last week with Dementis, Fade Rotha, we are having a great year of film villains. So really love that. Bolivar Trask, pretty decent. He's fine, but Bastion is definitely my favorite. And Mr. Sinister, I was kind of disappointed with how they use him, but I still think there's very good villains. And even Magneto is not a villain. It's just that he has a different opinion from Charles and most of the X-Men. So he's not a villain. He's more like an anti. I think he's still a hero. And I really love the writing of Magneto this season. He's one of, I think, a lot of people's favorite X-Men characters because he is so complicated that he won't come to trust humans because humans constantly let mutants down. But yeah, Magneto, very fascinating this season. Charles coming back was interesting. I didn't find it that exciting, him coming back. Like, I would have been fine. I really liked the episode 1. We kind of get this existential crisis of the X-Men. Like, we don't have Professor Charles Xavier. Like, what are we going to do? And Scott Summers, it seems like he could be a leader, but then, of course, he's going to leave. And then Magneto shows up, and he promised, and of course, it was in the will and testament of Charles Xavier that he will take over the X-Men. So I really liked the direction it was going. And then, it was cool. We got the Shi'ar Empire stuff, it was neat. It was cool to be in space, and you get him doing his mind tricks on them. But I don't know, it feels like kind of, anticlimactic to the series finale of X-Men, the animated series, which he died in the finale. Then, the start of this season sets it up. But I'm sure in the comics, a billion times, Charles has come back from the dead, like many characters have in comic books. He was gone for about 5 episodes, and then he comes back in this one. Like, I would have probably saved that for season 2, to be honest. But whatever. I still really like his character, and I feel like his voice acting was fine. I think he may have been one of the performers that was recast or reshuffled around, or it's a new actor altogether. But one thing that we did get out of Charles coming back is just the great dynamic between Magneto and Charles, which even in the movies is always great. There's never a bad Charles and Eric, scene that I haven't enjoyed. Like, every time they interact is just so phenomenal. And there was, as per usual, there was a lot of sexual tension in the show between the two of them. Like, I was in the series finale or season finale, I actually thought for a second, like, oh, are they about to kiss? Like, I actually felt it. I was like, oh, they're about to kiss. And then it didn't happen, but I was like, whoa. And then I watched Nando V Movies. I watched his review, which again was really great. And he said the same thing. And I was like, okay, I'm glad I wasn't the only one picking up that vibe. And then every time I would read a Letterbox review or whatever for all of the movies, every single time they were saying like the gay energy between Charles and Eric and stuff like that. And I'm like, oh, okay, so maybe this is a reoccurring thing that, people ship them or whatever. But yeah, actual sparks between Charles and Eric. Magneto in the finale, he rips the adamantium out of Logan's body. He pulls it out, which was just so insanely badass. And it looks like we're getting Bone Claw Logan in season 2. So that was pretty wild. I think the series finale altogether, like the 3-part series finale, Tolerance is Extinction, parts 1 and 2 and 3, all 3 parts I seriously enjoyed with the introduction of Bastion and all that stuff. It was just really great. And I really like where the show ends, actually. Season 1, Bastion is defeated. Asteroid M, it avoids Earth. All the X-Men are sent through time separately, and Cyclops and Jean are in 3960 AD, and there's like a desolate future where they encounter Mother Ascani and a young Nathan, and Rogue, Nightcrawler, Beast Xavier, and Magneto are in Egypt in 3000 BC, where they meet on Saba Nur, who is Apocalypse, and it's a young version of Apocalypse. And then in the mid-credit scene, we see Apocalypse, like actual Apocalypse, find one of Gambit's cards in the present day in Genosha. So really cool how they ended the series. really enjoyed that. I don't want to give away the tier list, but I will say that this is one of the favorite X-Men things I watched other than one of the movies. I think if this were part of the tier list, this would be an S tier, absolutely. This is just such a great show. I think anyone could enjoy. It's just a classic. It feels so original, and I just love that it's not tied to anything. Like, we get, other superheroes showing up in the finale. We see Spider-Man, we see the Avengers, we see Cloak and Dagger, I believe. We see Daredevil. And it's just cool to see all these different characters, but it's not like the MCU where it feels bogged down in trying to tie in other properties, if you know what I mean. So yeah, X-Men 97, it's fun, dramatic, emotional, amazing action, superb character development, and it leaves you wanting more. It gives you amazing fan moments. I'm gonna rewatch that Storm rediscovering her powers, seeing a billion times. It's like Spider-Man 2 where Peter Parker gets his powers back. Just it's so great. I love moments like that where a character finds themselves again. So that's X-Men 97. Highly recommend. Now, let's get into the main event. This is going to be a longer episode, but let's do this. Let's get into our X-Men tier list. Okay, so over the past 2.5 weeks, I've been watching an X-Men movie like every night or every 2 nights, and there's 13 of them as I listed at the start of the episode. So I didn't watch them in chronological order of the timeline. I watched them in the release order because I wanted to experience how the public experienced the X-Men movies coming out. So there is 5 grades possible in this tier list. There's S, the highest, A, B, C, and F. So we're going to go through these 13 movies. I'll read some maybe funny letterbox reviews that I found, but let's start with the first one, X-Men, or just X as I think it was called sometimes. This came out in 2000, the year I was born. It's an hour and 45 minutes, I think. I don't think I've ever actually seen the full X-Men movie because when I was a kid, like I said, these were very mature movies. To be honest, they were kind of scary when I was a kid, and I have to say, I really enjoyed it. I think it's a super solid start to this franchise, and what I love most about it, it feels like I feel so nostalgic watching these movies. They're not this massive shared universe like we have now with superhero movies. They just feel like we're on this new path. These movies and, the Raimi Spider-Man movies just feel so original and crafted until you get to X-Men Last Stand. That one I didn't like. But X-Men 1 and 2 are just great. But X-Men itself, I just love Rogue's interactions with Wolverine, just their relationship that he's also trying to come to terms with, like, okay, I do need to reconnect with the world and I can't just be a cage fighter my entire life. And Rogue is like discovering her powers as well. And I finally understood the meme of Storm saying, "Do you know what happens to a toad when it's struck by lightning?" The same thing that happens to everything else. I died laughing. Absolutely just adored it. So many great things I seriously enjoyed about this, like Sir Ian McKellen as Magneto, phenomenal casting. Sir Patrick Stewart as Professor Charles Xavier, just so perfect. I absolutely love them. Hugh Jackman as Wolverine. I know he's way too tall to be Wolverine, but he is consistently good in these movies. I think he is the top performer for sure in these movies, other than probably Sir Patrick Stewart and Sir Ian McKellen. I think those three are so great in every movie. Cyclops a little underused, like they kind of make him to be this kind of Boy Scout Captain America type, and it's kind of lame, and he dies in like the third movie, so I don't know, kind of a bummer. And I'll read a letterbox review. Someone said 3 stars on a scale of 1 to gay. How gay is it to play chess with your frenemy in prison while talking about the future? So again, the Charles and Eric dynamic has always been there, and it was really funny to see it play out in X-Men 97, and it's very, I don't know, interesting. And I just want to read the first paragraph of this one review that I saw. Embarrassing as it is to admit now, I can remember how excited I was when Hugh Jackman first showed up as Wolverine as a grouchy, badass cage fighter. He had the cigar, he had the attitude, he had that ridiculous hair. I leaned forward in my seat in stunned amazement, muttering, "Holy shit, they actually did it." And there is kind of a, I don't know, you're watching it and you're just kind of like loving everything about these movies. They feel so highly original. So if I had to assign it a grade, I would say it's an A. I don't think it's like S tier. I don't think it's perfect, but it's very good. So I would go A tier. And then we get to X-Men 2, which came out next, which I think is honestly better than the first one. I think Brian Cox as Stryker is inspired casting. I really love Rogue's interaction with Magneto and Mystique after the first movie. Like, there's this one letterbox that I think sums up this movie so well. They gave it 4 stars. It's Holly Beth, and they say, "Jesus, this film is fucking wild. There's so many iconic moments. Bye, bye, bye. NSYNC comes on the goddamn radio. Bobby's cat starts purring and licking at Wolverine's claws. What do you teach?" And Wolverine says art. Magneto escapes from his plastic prison by extracting the goddamn iron from the guard's blood. Yeah, that was one of my favorite moments. That was so crazy, and that's why in the X-Men 97 finale when he takes the adamantium out of Wolverine, I was blown away. What else in here that I like? Yeah, then in Jean Grey and Wolverine kiss, and then in the next scene, Mystique as Jean Grey climbs into Wolverine's tent and starts making out with him for no reason, just because she can. Magneto and Mystique giggling in the corner, acting like bitchy mean girls to Rogue. Quote, we love what you've done with your hair, by the way. That's a dorky helmet. Mystique flipping the bird to Stryker as she slides through a door. And just, there's so much great stuff in this film. I gave it 4.5 stars. The first one I gave 4 stars. This one I gave 4.5 stars. I would also say, if there was like an A+ category, I would do it there. It's almost S tier. I don't know. Is it S tier? It's really good. Okay, I'll go A tier. I think it's good, but it's still like kind of cheesy in some moments. But then we get to X-Men The Last Stand, the third one. Just, oh my god, it's just abysmal. It's not the worst thing in the world, but it's really not great. There's way too many characters. The plot is an absolute mess and just goes all over the place. This is where we really start to get a little bit of a dip in the quality of this series. So I would say B. It's not the worst thing that this franchise has done, but it's certainly not amazing. And after this original trilogy, these 3, that's when they branch out and they want to do spin-off films, and we get X-Men Origins Wolverine, which I remember seeing in theaters with my father, and I was like, this is such a strange film. I don't like this. What is happening? It feels so cheesy and Matrix types vibes. So yeah, the whole Blob stuff is odd. The Deadpool Wade Wilson stuff is really strange. I said 2 out of 5, which I think is fair. I think I would give it a C or an F. I don't know. It's pretty bad. I think I would go F. I think it doesn't pass if this is a test of X-Men movies. It's just a really goofy film. I'm not a fan of X-Men Origins Wolverine. But after that, we kind of get a rise in quality. We get X-Men First Class, which I remember watching when I was younger. It was really fun, and it's Matthew Vaughn. It feels like they were like, oh, let's do prequels of the X-Men movies. And I don't know how I feel about James McAvoy as Professor X. Not a huge fan, but I think Michael Fassbender as Magneto is so perfect. He is outstanding in every time he's Magneto, except maybe X-Men Dark Phoenix. It feels like he's phoning it in a bit. Nicholas Hoult as Beast, so great. Jennifer Lawrence is okay as Mystique, but I think First Class is really fun, and it's just like a cool prequel series, and that's when we thought, oh, these movies are all connected. I would go B tier. I would go B tier for X-Men First Class. That seems fair to me. I mean, it's not, I don't know, I gave it a 4, and it's not like a really good 4 like X-Men the first one. It's just a 4, because I think there is some stuff in it that's like kind of cheesy and whack. I don't know. I know it's a lot of people's favorites along with Days of Future Past, but to me it did feel a little bit cheesy in parts. And then after X-Men First Class, we continued with the spin-off movies. We got The Wolverine, which was James Mangold, who also did Logan, and he's doing the new Swamp Thing film. And yeah, this one felt like a very much a step up on the last Wolverine movie. I think it's still, I don't know, it's fine, but I think it is a lot more fun than the last one and has a better storyline with like all of I just think Japan is a cool environment for Wolverine to be in, that he's kind of hiding low, and his connection to Hiroshima and Nagasaki is really cool. I said 3 stars. I feel like it just feels like it's kind of missing something, but it still is a fun movie. I would probably go for The Wolverine. I would go B tier. I feel like it's like a 3. Yeah, it's fine. I enjoyed watching it, to be honest. I think Hugh Jackman is always solid as Wolverine. I think even in a bad movie like this one, he's still good. So I would go B tier. That feels fair to him. But after that, I feel like we have a huge step up in the series, back to reaching the levels of X-Men 2 with X-Men Days of Future Past. I feel like that was X-Men Days of Future Past is just such a fun blending of the 2 timelines, which originally they thought that the new movies would be the prequels, but then they kind of retcon that slowly, and then they just completely give up on that idea eventually. And X-Men Days of Future Past, you kind of see some connections, but not really. And I actually liked at the end of The Wolverine that they tied right into X-Men Days of Future Past. I thought that was cool. And Days of Future Past, I feel like it's pretty good. You get some of the originals back. I really don't like that they just don't use Rogue at all. That felt kind of lame, because she was like one of my favorite characters at the start, and then X-Men 2 and X-Men 3, it feels like she kind of doesn't do anything. Actually, X-Men 2, she's kind of involved, but X-Men 3, Last Stand, she's not really that important. X-Men Days of Future Past, I'd probably go A tier. I feel like that's a good, I gave it 4 stars. I think it's an A, like an A minus, whereas X-Men 2 is like A plus, and then X-Men is like an A, but still no S tiers. I feel like we haven't got to the supreme heights yet. Like, I don't think any of these films are completely untouchable, but after this, we get a different spinoff, and it's not, this is the first X-Men movie that wasn't a spinoff of just one of the characters from the original movies. He was actually a character in a spinoff, but then they kind of retconned that. So Deadpool, we finally get Deadpool come out. Ryan Reynolds had been trying for years to get the film made until he just leaked some footage, and then it got greenlit because people loved it. I remember when this came out, I was 16 years old, and I thought it was the funniest shit in the world. I still think it is funny, but it is kind of like a little goofy at times, and like a lot of just like nut jokes and balls jokes, which is what Deadpool is. So I enjoy it. I think Ryan Reynolds is funny. I think he doesn't have a great, CV of films. I think a lot of stuff he makes is pretty mediocre, but I think as Deadpool, his humor is just so on point. I'm very excited for the new one. I'd probably go A tier for Deadpool. I gave it a 4 out of 5, and I really enjoyed it. I feel like it's a solid movie. You watch it, it has a lot of heart in it. I really like his interaction with the X-Men and poking fun at the fact that he only has like 2 of the off-brand kind of X-Men characters or not-important ones. And then after Deadpool, we really start to take a dive in quality with the just X-Men movies, not the spin-offs. Not the rest of the spin-offs, but we get X-Men Apocalypse after, which I remember in 2018 or something, like a couple years after it came out, I tried to watch it on streaming, and I think about 5 minutes in, I just got distracted, and I was like, oh, I'll watch this later. I never did watch it again, and it's not good. It feels so gray and depressing and just so generic and uninspired, and it's probably good that Bryan Singer went out swinging, because he's a real piece of shit, and I'm happy that his last movie was a stinker. That way they weren't tempted to bring him back. And I think Oscar Isaac as the villain, what a waste, because he's a phenomenal actor, and they just like make the weirdest generic villain in Apocalypse. So really hated that. And there's something about all of the young versions of all the characters that I didn't like, that they kind of just ditched the whole idea of the original trilogy, which they were originally making a prequel for, and now they're just like, oh no, it's a new timeline or whatever. And Deadpool even makes a joke about that in Deadpool 2. He's like, I don't understand these timelines. And it's so true. You're watching, especially when you watch like all 13 together, you're like, wait, so are these all related or not? I'm so confused. But yeah, I gave X-Men Apocalypse 2 out of 5. I would say it's a C. Like, it's a watchable movie. I don't think it's a complete fail like X-Men Origins Wolverine, which is just like laughably bad sometimes. Like, you could still throw it on, and there's some stuff. I think the Quicksilver stuff is so awesome. Absolutely love that. In Days of Future Past as well, I didn't mention that, but the Quicksilver scene is so great when they're breaking Magneto out. And in the house blowing up in Apocalypse, loved it. Evan Peters is so good at Quicksilver. Finally, we get to Logan, which, here's a funny story. Well, I shouldn't say it's a funny story. You never, as Conan O'Brien says, you never want to start a story with, here's a funny story, because you should let people judge. But I'm 17 years old. It's a snow day. My friend and I go to the movie theaters. We buy tickets to Logan. We're both so excited. We've heard so many great things, and we get our tickets, get our snacks. We walk up to the screen, to the door to enter into the cinema, and there's a guy outside checking people's tickets and asking for ID for people that are young. We're 17 years old. We're a year too young for a rated R movie, and he doesn't let us in. And we are both heartbroken. We've driven like 40 minutes of what is usually a 20-minute drive because it was a snow day and terrible weather. We're like, no, we're going to see Logan today. It looks so awesome. We don't get in. He exchanges our tickets. We go to see Hidden Figures instead. Still really great movie. I still really loved Hidden Figures. Glenn Powell's in there and Octavia Spencer. But I was heartbroken. And for some reason, I had never gone back and watched Logan. And let me say, my favorite X-Men movie. I cried like a baby. It has some of the most phenomenal action of the X-Men movies. I think it's the best story in an X-Men movie, and it's like one of my favorite movies recently in the last few years. Like, holy shit, why have I never watched this before? It's so great. Hugh Jackman as Old Man Logan, so phenomenal. Daphne Keane as Laura, so great. And her relationship with Logan is just so amazing. And when he dies at the end, I was weeping. I was actually crying and sobbing uncontrollably. It was so sad. And again, James Mangold, and I read like the Wikipedia background. It's really interesting how they came to this, and they weren't sure if Hugh Jackman was going to come back as Wolverine. He was just in X-Men Apocalypse and in like a cameo scene, which I found pointless, but very interesting. Logan, I would do S tier. I think it is other than X-Men 97, for me, it is the best X-Men thing that we've ever had. Absolutely loved it. It's fabulous. I could watch it. I would watch it again tomorrow. I watched it last Saturday and it's Friday today, I would literally watch it tonight again. It was amazing. It was a life-changing watch, to be honest. Then we get Deadpool 2, which I think is just as good as the first one, if not a little bit better. Like, I was very close to putting, to me, they're on par with each other. They're just as good as one another. I think the jokes are a little bit better in the second one, but maybe the story, I don't know, the story isn't as heartfelt as the first one. I really like the X-Force stuff in part 2, and I think Zazie Beetz, I can never say her name right. She's great as Domino. She's so funny, and Josh Brolin Cable is so great. They even call him Thanos a few times. A really funny movie. I would go A tier as well. After Deadpool 2, we take a steep dive off of a cliff with X-Men Dark Phoenix and the New Mutants. X-Men Dark Phoenix is so depressing and so uninspiring. Like, it's still, I don't know. It's not enjoyable. At least X-Men Apocalypse, there's a couple of things that you can take out of it and you're like, okay, that was a watchable movie. X-Men Dark Phoenix is just depressingly, it's just like so depressingly AI written. It feels like every other shitty, really bad superhero movie that we've had where they were just like, oh, we just need to hit the major plot points and we're good. I feel like it's a waste of Sophie Turner as Jean Grey. I think she's a phenomenal performer and it just feels like a waste. And I feel like it's ultimately, that's an F. It was a major F, a major fail, bro. I kind of hated it. I was like, this is not enjoyable. I think young Cyclops is wasted. Again, they never make Cyclops fun. They waste him in the first trilogy where they kill him in the third movie. It feels like he's barely in any of the 3 movies. And then they waste young Cyclops. Just strange. And the villain is really bad. Like Jessica Chastain is, what's her name? Vuk or something like that. I don't even know what her character name is. That's the thing. Like, it's not a memorable villain. Yeah, I think it's Vuk. And just terrible. I gave it a 2 out of 5. Oh, Logan, I gave 5 out of 5, obviously. X-Men Dark Phoenix, 2 out of 5. The Deadpool movies, I gave a 4 out of 5. So, there's some 4s, there's some 4.5, there's 3s, there's 2s, lots of 2s. And then there's some, there's a 1 coming up, I believe. Yeah, X-Men Dark Phoenix, I would give it an F. And finally, we end this great crescendo of X-Men movies with The New Mutants, a movie that was rewritten, reshot, recut a billion times, has some of the worst performances I've seen. It has, Anya Taylor-Joy is still fine in it, to be honest, but everyone else feels like they're in a CW TV show, and you can't convince me otherwise. Really uninteresting. The villains, what are the villains? It's kind of themselves. I didn't really get it. It's very rare that I say, like, this is, I didn't get it, and I actually didn't understand the movie. I was like, wait, so was there actually a villain? And yeah, I'm very convinced that there was some chat GPT involved. That was 2020. I feel like they maybe used some kind of chat bot to write that film. New Mutants, hard F minus. At least, X-Men Wolverine, Origins Wolverine has like some funny things in it, and X-Men Dark Phoenix doesn't really have anything good. New Mutants was a tough watch. It was just really bad. And that's the current state of the X-Men. I feel like it was at some point, diminishing returns, really. A little, disappointing. We'll see what the future is for this franchise. They're writing the new one for the MCU, and I think they really just need to go back to taking inspiration from X-Men 97 and go back to kind of that core team and just keep it fun, keep it a very restricted story of just the X-Men, have very small connections to the MCU. Don't bog us down in having to talk about a billion other shows, a billion other movies. But yeah, let's recap. Logan, S tier. In the A tier, we have X-Men, X2, X-Men Days of Future Past in both Deadpool movies. B tier, we have The Last Stand, First Class, and The Wolverine. C tier, we have X-Men Apocalypse. And F tier, we have X-Men Origins Wolverine, The Dark Phoenix, and The New Mutants. So a bit of a bell-shaped curve. So that's been the X-Men Spectacular. Let's get into what else I watched, because I have a couple of things I want to talk about. Okay, I watched 2 movies this week and a YouTube video that I want to recommend. So first, I watched Night Swim, the, horror movie with Wyatt Russell. It's about a haunted pool, and it has healing powers, but you need to sacrifice someone. A really terrible watch. It was honestly more comedic than scary. I was not scared during it, which is what you want in a horror movie. You want to be scared. I gave it a 2 out of 5. Really strange. It just felt very generic. Like it felt like a Chat GPT movie. Okay, I need you to write me a horror movie, and that's the best it came up with. And like Wyatt Russell's very strange performance in it. Like he's so average. Everybody's very average in it. It has Carrie Condon from Banshees of Inisherin, and she's just like wasted as the mom. That's I don't know, just very strange. And the kid actors in it are really bad. It was laughably bad. So if you want a stupid horror movie, watch that. But like I wouldn't recommend it. And then I rewatched Dune Part 2 because now I have it on physical media and I have it on digital as well. So I rewatched it on digital actually because the 4K hadn't arrived yet. One really annoying thing, I got the 4K disc. There's no digital code on it. So, but I bought it anyways. I was like, yeah, I just want to have a physical media copy of it. And I also bought it on digital because it's actually super cheap to buy it on digital as well. So I rewatched that. Still great. Still my favorite movie of the year. 5 stars. Absolutely. And I'm actually finishing Dune Messiah this weekend. I have about 94 pages left. Amazing book. I'm seriously so in love with it. I'm going to post a TikTok of all my favorite quotes in it. And maybe I'll record a little episode or something about book 1 and book 2 and what I think of the Dune books versus the movies. It's just seriously a great movie, Dune Part 2. And the action just blows me away. But most of all, it's just such a tragedy and just the story of Paul and his terrible purpose in life and what he's being thrown into and like the questions of free will versus fate and do we have any say on our paths in life. And I don't know, every time I watch it I get something different from it, so I just was so in love with it. And then the final thing that I watched was the Best of the Worst Spotlight, Cade, The Tortured Crossing, which is a video by Red Letter Media, and it's a Neil Breen movie that they're reviewing. And if you don't know who Neil Breen is, there's so many great YouTubers that have reacted over the years to Neil Breen movies. He makes very bad, low-budget films, and he, self-funds all these films. They're just terrible. It's a hilarious video. I usually don't recommend YouTube stuff, but it was an hour and 6 minutes. Really funny. I could not recommend it enough. Red Letter Media, absolutely love them. They actually put out a Furiosa video this week, which I seriously enjoyed. They make so many great points, and it's very validating when you watch, reviewers you admire and they're coming to the same conclusions. You're like, okay, I'm glad I wasn't the only one who, didn't like that part, or, it doesn't make you feel like you have bad taste. It's like, okay, at least I have average taste. That's what else I watched this week. And what else am I going to watch this weekend? Well, I actually got Spider-Man 2 on PS5 because I've played Spider-Man PS5 and Miles Morales, and I was like, oh, why haven't I got Spider-Man 2? So I got the digital deluxe version, which was on sale, like $30 off. I'm going to play a bunch of that this weekend. I'm also going to watch the Champions League final tomorrow while I edit this episode. I'm also going to watch The First Omen, which is now on Disney Plus, a new horror movie. As I said, I'm trying to watch more horror movies. I'm going to maybe watch the new Netflix movie Atlas with Jennifer Lopez and Simu Liu, which is getting just shit on in reviews. I might watch The Beekeeper. I think that's mostly what I'm looking at because those are all in streaming now. So those are on my watch list to watch. And I'm thinking I might rewatch Normal People because I just feel like having my heart broken for some reason. And I saw that Daisy and Paul were doing a fundraiser this week for a really great Irish charity that helps with suicide and self-harm. So go check that out as well. I think they crashed the site because so many people are donating. But yeah, that's what I've been watching. And I think that about does it for the X-Men Spectacular. As always, you can rate and review this episode. Give it 5 stars on all platforms. It helps the show grow. Leave us a review. What did you think? Rate it 5 stars. You can rate it on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Acast, every streaming platform. Give it 5 stars, share it with a friend, make your friends listen to it, subject them to my sometimes terrible takes probably, or my incohesive thoughts. And I'm also on YouTube. You can subscribe, like, comment there. What have you thought of the X-Men movies? Do you have a favorite? What do you think should happen with the X-Men in the Marvel universe? They've just been around this whole time, but been operating secretly, or what's up with that? Is it going to be like another universe where they, collide? But hit the notification bell so you know every time I upload on YouTube. I post lots of shorts as well. You can email the show, watcherofallthings@gmail.com. Let me know what you want to hear this summer. If there's any movies that I haven't watched or anything like that you'd like me to talk about, I'm happy to do that, or TV shows. That's watcherofallthings@gmail.com. You can follow me on TikTok @watcher.of.allthings or Instagram @watcherofallthings. I post on both of those. Follow me on all the socials, including my Letterboxd, which is KIKIJ70. That's KikiJ70. KIKIJ70 is how you spell it. And this week I just want to highlight a great charity that I saw one of my favorite singers, Chappell Roan, was also raising money for. It's called Mercy USA, Mercy USA for Aid and Development, and they are helping currently with the Gaza crisis. Mercy USA is delivering hot meals inside Gaza to families in the Rafah camp for internally displaced people. Our partner on the ground, the Agricultural and Environmental Development Society, AED, is cooking and packaging and distributing hot meals with bottled water to families every evening. Donate for hot meals today and know you're providing urgent help for people who are enduring the worst nightmare imaginable. So I'll leave the link for that charity in the description below. And speaking of next week, we have a really great episode. We have Hitman, which is going to be on Netflix next week. And I saw it in theaters last week, but check it out next weekend, June 7th. It comes out on Netflix, so you can watch it and enjoy the Monday episode for the sake of your ears. Thank you again, as always, for listening. This one was a little bit longer, but I hope you've enjoyed it. It was fun to just talk about a generic kind of topic, a little bit about something new, but do a tier list. Do you want me to do more tier list focused episodes? I'd be happy to do that because it is fun to do and just rank them all. I hope you have a fabulous week, and I will see you in the next one.